Welcome to Story Sale English. Today, let's dive into the story of Jia Baoyu, one of the most unforgettable characters in Dream of the Red Chamber. He was born with jade, lived among beauty, poetry, and sorrow, and carried a heart too tender for the world around him. Through his love, confusion, grief, and awakening, we can see both the brilliance and the tragedy of the great Jia family. Chapter 1 Before the Red Dust. I was not a man if you ask who I am, even now I cannot answer in one simple sentence. Only after I have lived through everything do I understand a little. This body, this jade, this heart full of feeling, none of them came from nowhere. I was not born as an ordinary human being. Long before I entered the world, I was only a stone, a useless stone left behind when the goddess Nuwa repaired the sky. All the other stones were chosen. Only I was left behind, lying alone at the foot of Green Ridge Peak. Because I was not chosen, I felt shame. Because I felt shame, I grew restless. Because I grew restless, I longed for the human world. I wanted to see splendor. I wanted to see sorrow. I wanted to see love. I wanted to see what life among human beings was like. Then a monk and a Taoist priest came by. They saw that I had spirit, and they changed me into a bright piece of jade and carried me down into the world of dust and dreams. At the same time, another fate was already being prepared. There was a plant called the crimson pearl flower. It had once been watered by the divine attendant Sheniying, and because of that kindness, it wished to go down into the human world and repay him with tears. So a stone, a flower, a piece of jade, and a debt of tears, all were tied together before I was even born. At that time, I only wanted to enter the world. I did not understand what the monk had warned me. In the human world there is joy, but joy never lasts. Beauty is always followed by loss. Good things are always followed by trouble. I did not listen. If I had listened, perhaps there would have been no later grief. But if I had never gone, then I would never have known how lovely girls could be, how painful love could be, and how bright a dream could seem before it breaks. So now I often think, people only know me as Baoyu, the precious son of the Jia family, the boy born with a magic jade in his mouth. They do not know that from the very beginning there was already a mistake in my life. I was meant to be a stone. I was not meant to be a man. And because I forced my way into the human world, I had to taste everything that world could give, its flowers, its poetry, its laughter, its tears, and at last its emptiness. Before I was born, the jade already had its history. When I entered the Jia family, I came into the world with that jade in my mouth. Everyone was shocked. Everyone called it a miracle. My grandmother loved me more because of it. My father distrusted me more because of it. Now I understand that the jade was not simply a treasure. It was a sign. As long as I wore it, I still belonged to this world. When I lost it, my fate began to slip away from human life, but that came later. At the start, I was only a little child lying among silk and perfume, surrounded by loving hands. If anyone had looked only at that moment, they would have said I was the happiest child in the world. But once a person enters the red dust of this world, happiness and sorrow are born from the same root. The more love you receive, the more you may fail those who love you. The more beauty you see, the more pain you will feel when it fades. The more deeply you love, the more deeply you will suffer. I did not understand that then. I only knew that I loved flowers, soft colors, sweet voices, and girls. Chapter 2 Born with jade, yet never meant for their world. I was born in the wrong mansion, a great house filled with rank, wealth, books, and old honor. People looking at me from outside would have thought my future was already clear. I should study, pass the examinations, become an official, support the family, and bring even more glory to the Jia name. But I was never made for that path. When I was born, the jade was in my mouth. Everyone treated me as if I were special. Later, when they placed many objects before me at my first birthday test, I ignored the useful and noble things and reached only for powders, bracelets, and women's ornaments. My father was furious. He said I would grow up to be a useless lover of pleasure. Yet if I look back now, I think that moment told the truth more clearly than anything else. It was not that I purposely rejected the world of men. It was simply that from the beginning my heart was drawn toward things that were soft, pure, fragrant, and gentle. Fame, official rank, and duty seemed heavy to me. But a flower branch, a poem written by a girl, a handkerchief touched by tears, these things entered straight into my heart. People laughed when I said, girls are made of water, men are made of mud. But I truly felt that way. Whenever I was with men, tutors, officials, old scholars, family elders, I often felt a kind of dull heaviness. They spoke of duty, success, family honor, proper conduct, and advancement. Even when they spoke well, their words were full of dust. But when I was with girls, my heart felt clear. If they were laughing, I wanted to listen. If they were writing poems, I wanted to hear every line. If they were quarreling, crying, sulking, or teasing one another, I found even that more alive than all the serious talk in the outer rooms. So they all said I was strange. My father looked at me with cold disappointment. Every time he saw me, he asked about books, lessons, discipline, or future success. The moment those words began, my spirit seemed to leave my body. If grandmother was nearby, I felt safer. If she was not there, I wished only to escape. My mother also wanted me to do well, but she worried more about appearances and proper behavior. Grandmother was the only one who loved me without first trying to correct me. She said I was still young and would improve with age. But that was where they were wrong. The older I grew, the more clearly I became myself. I did not become more like them. I became less like them. This was not rebellion for its own sake. I did not hate learning. I did not hate beauty in words. What I hated was the dead feeling that came when life was reduced to ambition, rules, and rank. I could not believe that becoming successful in their sense was the highest purpose of life, and yet I was born in exactly that world. So from childhood onward, I lived as if I were standing in a doorway. On one side was the road everyone wanted me to take. On the other side was the world I loved and could not leave. As long as grandmother protected me, and as long as the girls were near me, I could pretend this question would wait forever. But the future never waits. Chapter 3. When cousin Lin arrived, I had grown up around many girls. Noble girls, maidservants, cousins, companions, they filled my days from the beginning. But the person who truly struck my heart was Lin Dayu. The day she entered our house, I was not with her at first. I only heard that my aunt's daughter had arrived from the south, because her parents were gone and she had come to live with our family. When I finally went in and saw her, the whole room was gathered around grandmother, and there she sat, small, thin, very delicate. With a kind of sorrow already hidden in her eyes, the moment I saw her, something moved inside me. I could not explain it. It was not simply that she was pretty. It was not simply that she looked fragile and refined. It was that she seemed familiar in a way deeper than memory. Not as if I had met her before in this life, but as if my heart had known her long before I ever opened my eyes in this world. So I blurted out, "I have seen this cousin before." Everyone laughed at me, but I was not joking. Later I learned that she too had felt something similar. In truth, what lay behind that feeling was older than either of us understood. She was the crimson pearl flower come into the world, and I was the one she had come to repay with tears. But at that time I did not know any of that clearly. I only knew that she was different. Dayu was unlike other girls. It was not only her beauty or talent, it was the sharpness of her spirit. She was sensitive, proud, quick to understand, and quick to hurt. She did not try to please people easily. She did not hide her sadness well. She could say cold things, yet her heart was warm and true. To many people those qualities might seem difficult. To me they made her real. From the beginning I felt that she was like me, not outwardly. She was quieter than I was, more guarded, more easily wounded. But inwardly she was also someone who could not live lightly in this world. She could not smooth her heart into a shape the world liked. She felt too deeply for that. At first we did not only smile sweetly at each other, we argued often. She was suspicious and I liked to tease. She was proud and I was careless. A joke from me could make her angry, a cold word from her could leave me restless for hours. But that was exactly why we became so close. If I did not care, I would not have bothered to explain, to joke, to apologize, to swear, or to comfort her. With other people I could let things pass. With her every mood mattered. She had come to our house young, alone, and already full of hidden grief. Even though grandmother loved her, she still lived with the pain of being a guest in another person's home. I could feel that even when no one said it aloud. When she was ill, I worried more than some of the people who served her daily. If she ignored me, I felt lost. If she mocked me sharply, I remembered it long after. If she smiled at me with real warmth, my whole day brightened. Was that love already? At the time, I could not say. I only knew that when she was there, the world seemed more alive. And when she was unhappy, even the light in the room changed. Baoyu was already in the household too. She was another kind of excellence, graceful, calm, wise, composed, and admired by everyone. If Dayu was like a hidden note of sorrow in music, Baoyu was like a perfectly balanced piece of jade. I respected her deeply. I cared for her too, but she and Dayu touched different places in me. Baoyu could calm the world, Dayu could move my soul. At that age, I did not yet fully understand the difference, but I was already living inside it. Chapter 4, A Dream in the Land of Illusion. Since childhood, I had a strange habit. When I saw beautiful flowers, elegant girls, fine rooms, or lovely scenes, I would fall into a kind of deep daze. Sometimes people would speak to me, and I would hardly hear them. It was as if I were always half ready to step from this world into another one. The Dream in the Land of Illusion was the clearest example. I had gone with cousin Feng to the Ning mansion. Feeling sleepy, I lay down in Qin Kiking's room and fell into a dream. In that dream, someone led me to a place more beautiful than any place on earth. The buildings were bright and delicate. Curtains and screens shone, strange flowers gave off perfume. Everything was lovely beyond words. There I met the fairy Disenchantment. She first showed me a set of registers and pictures. They were mysterious and hard to understand, each one seeming to hide the fate of a woman from our family. At the time, I could not make sense of them. They looked like riddles. Only much later did I understand that I had been shown the endings of the girls around me before those endings ever happened. Then I was taken deeper into that dream world. Some heavenly maidens saw me and complained that I was a dirty thing from the human world, not worthy to enter a pure realm of girls. That phrase stayed with me, a pure realm of girls. Even in heaven, it seemed, there was a space where the spirit of women remained finer and cleaner than the world of men. The fairy said I had been brought there to be guided. She spoke of love, desire, fate, and awakening, as if my life was already moving toward a conclusion that I myself could not yet see. Then I saw the crimson pearl flower, and I heard the story of how it had once received dew from the divine attendant Shenying, and how it had later come into the world to repay that kindness with tears. When I heard this, my heart stirred. Even in the dream, I thought of Dayu. When I woke up, much of the dream became unclear, like mist after sunrise. But it left behind a strange feeling in me, part wonder, part sadness, part fear. It was as though I had been told that all the joy around me carried a secret shadow. Soon after, the Grand View Garden was completed, and we all moved in. Those were the happiest years of my life. The garden was not simply a garden. For me, it was almost like that dream world made real. There were separate residences for each girl: Bamboo Lodge, Fragrance Court, Autumn Cool Studio, the Lotus Pavilion, and many others. I lived in Happy Red Court, surrounded by Xian, Qingwen, Sheiyu, Fangyuan, and the other girls who moved in and out of my room and my life. Outside were Dayu, Baoyu, Xiangyun, Tanchen, Zichen, and the others. We wrote poems, we admired flowers, we played games. We held poetry clubs, we read plays and old love stories. We laughed, argued, wept, teased, and dreamed. What I loved was not only the beauty of the buildings, trees, and flowers. I loved the girls themselves. Each one had her own way of speaking, joking, suffering, and shining. In the eyes of the world, some of them were only daughters, some cousins, some maids, some actresses. But in my eyes, they were all spirits of uncommon grace, briefly gathered together in one place. At that time, I truly believed that if life could remain like that forever, I would ask for nothing more. But no human garden is heaven. A garden in heaven may be an illusion, but it is still free. A garden in the human world is always surrounded by walls, family expectations, rank, and judgment. The more deeply I sank into this world of girls and flowers, the further I moved from my father's world. The closer I grew to Dayu, the more I stood against everything people meant when they spoke of a proper match. At that time, however, I refused to think too much about such things. As long as the days were lovely, I wanted only to stay inside them. Chapter 5, Dayu in my heart, Beachai in the world later. People often said that I was always torn between Dayu and Beachai. As if I myself had no clear feeling, that is not entirely true. Beachai's goodness was plain for everyone to see. She was beautiful in a calm and balanced way. Her movements were measured, her speech was steady. She knew how to behave in every situation. Even my mother, who judged everyone, quietly approved of her. If Beachai sat in a room, even the servants naturally became more careful. If anyone had asked the whole household who best fit the image of a noble young lady, most of them would have answered, Zhu Beachai. Dayu was different. She was too thin, too sensitive, too sharp, too full of hidden failing. She was like a willow branch in the wind or moonlight on water, lovely but fragile. She cried easily, hurt easily, and thought too deeply. In the eyes of the practical world, such a girl could seem difficult, even dangerous. But the things others disliked were often exactly the things I understood best. I knew why she mocked. I knew why she doubted. I knew why one careless sentence could hurt her for hours or even days. Her heart was simply too real. She could not cover it with easy smiles and proper words the way others did. So if I must say it plainly, with Beachai there was warmth and respect. With Dayu there was truth. This does not mean I did not care for Beachai, I did. She often tried quietly to guide me, to soften my worst habits, to protect me from embarrassment. When I made a fool of myself, she understood how to smooth things over. Her kindness was never loud. And yet there was always something between us, not dislike, not distance exactly, but a layer of the world itself. She belonged too well to the order of things. She understood harmony, caution, timing, duty, and proper measure. I, on the other hand, always felt uneasy the moment life became only a matter of what was proper. Dayu did not ask me to be proper. She could wound me with a sentence. She could make me swear loyalty in anger. She could accuse me of things I had not yet done, but with her, I never needed to pretend. Before Beachai, I might think first and speak later. Before Dayu, I often spoke straight from the heart. At the same time, I was not ignorant of the danger around us. The words gold and jade troubled me deeply. The family elders loved such ideas, a golden locket, a jade in the mouth, a proper matching of signs and tokens. Whenever Dayu used such words to mock me, I felt something sharp inside. It was not only because I feared she might misunderstand me. It was because I feared the world might one day truly force such a fate upon us. So I swore to her that if my heart ever turned false, heaven itself could punish me. She did not always believe me completely. But I meant those words. Even so, I was not made only for one kind of feeling. Around me were also Zion, Kingwen, Sheyu, and the others, each tied to my life in a different way. Zion knew my habits better than anyone and worried over my future with serious loyalty. Kingwen burned with anger, beauty, and spirit, and for that very reason I could never stop caring for her. Sheyu, Kiyuan, Fangyuan, each one brought some different tenderness or charm into my days. So people called me too emotional, too soft, too easily moved. I did not deny it. But what they meant by too emotional was not always what I felt. It was not only that I loved individual girls. It was that I could not bear to see anything beautiful be hurt. I did not want the girls to suffer. I did not want poetry to end. I did not want flowers to fade. I did not want Dayu to grow weaker or Beachai to be locked forever inside the rules of the world. The more I loved, the more I feared loss, and without knowing it, I was already walking toward it. Chapter 6, My father's beating. As a child, I was always somewhat afraid of my father. But as long as grandmother protected me, his anger remained mostly words, cold looks, or lessons that passed over my head. The real blow came later. There were many causes behind it: Jinchuan's death, rumors about my friendships outside the house, my connection with Jiang Yuhan. And above all, my father's long-growing disappointment in the kind of person I had become. He already thought me weak, undisciplined, and lost in useless feelings. Then one day everything came together. At that time, my heart was already troubled because of Jinchuan's death. I could hardly think clearly. When my father questioned me, I stood there unable to answer properly. In truth, I felt as if a part of me wanted to die too. I was in no state to behave like a respectful, steady son. To my father, however, I must have looked like an ungrateful and hopeless fool. Then the beating began. At first I tried to endure it silently. But when the blows kept falling, my whole body and spirit seemed to split apart. The pain was terrible, but what hurt even more was suddenly understanding how my father saw me. To him I was not a human being full of sorrow, pity, confusion, and love. I was a disgrace to the family, a son who wasted his gifts, chased after softness, and refused the proper road. He beat me as if he could force me into becoming the son he had wanted. But if I could truly have been beaten into another shape, I would not have been myself from the beginning. The whole family was shaken. Grandmother was furious, my mother wept. Xian, Shayu, and the other girls were terrified. Baoyu came. Dayu, though not there at the moment of the beating, later shed tears for me too. Lying in bed afterward, I thought less about the physical pain than about the change that had now become impossible to ignore. Something had been cut in two. Before the beating, I was still half living in a dream, moving among poems, girls, flowers, and moods. Thinking I might somehow continue like that forever. After the beating, I could no longer pretend the world would allow it. Xian understood this most clearly. Others cried because I had been hurt. She cried too, but she also thought about my future. Later, she spoke privately to my mother and said that if I was never corrected, if I was allowed to drift forever, then I would suffer far worse in the end. My mother was deeply moved by her loyalty and good sense. From that day forward, she regarded Xian with even greater trust and importance. At the time, I did not fully understand what this meant. Later, I did. That beating did not only wound me. It also pushed Xian's place in my life forward. Before that, she was already close to me. Afterward, she became someone my mother almost began to think of as a lasting companion for me. Baoyu visited me with concern and gentle advice. Her care always carried a quiet wish that I would become steadier, wiser, safer. Dayu's pain was different. She did not need many words. The change in her eyes was enough. That was when I understood something important. If someone truly suffers for you, they do not always speak much. Sometimes the deepest feeling is the hardest to say. As for me, I still did not want to become what my father wanted. I still did not dream of official rank or worldly success. But after that beating, one thought began to trouble me deeply. If I continue to live only as I please, I will not be the only one who pays for it. Xian worried because she feared I would be hurt again. Dayu wept because she could not bear my suffering. Even Baoyu's advice came from real concern. For the first time, I felt clearly that my own nature could become a burden to the people around me. And yet, what could I do? This was always the hardest part of my life. I knew what the world called the proper road, but I could not love it. I knew my own path would bring disaster, yet I could not turn away from it. My wounds healed little by little. The marks on my body faded. But something in my heart never returned to what it had been before. From then on, every time I entered the garden again and saw Dayu, Baoyu, Xian, Qingwen, and all the others, I felt more strongly how precious they were, because somewhere inside I had already begun to fear that such days would not last. And I was right. Chapter 7. Before the flowers fell, people began to scatter when people are young. They often believe that ruin must arrive with a great noise. They think a house must collapse, a tree must split, or a whole world must fall down at once before they can say, "Now everything is ending." But that is not how decline truly begins. It begins quietly. It begins in small things, a small illness, a few bitter words, a servant dismissed, a flower that blooms too late, a smile that no longer feels warm, a room that suddenly seems empty, though nothing inside it has moved. That was how the change began in the Grand View Garden. At first, everything still looked beautiful. The girls were still there, the poems were still being written. The garden paths were still full of flowers. Laughter still rose from the windows, but something had already changed in the air. One by one, sorrow entered our lives. First came losses that seemed small to other people, yet struck my heart like knives. Jinchuan died. People said she was only a maid. They said such things happen. They said it was sad, but life in a great house must move on. I could not think that way. I still remembered her voice, her face, the way she once laughed and answered back. How could someone who had been alive one day become only silence the next? If a person could vanish so quickly, what did all our daily laughter mean? What did today's happiness mean if tomorrow a single body could sink into cold water and disappear forever? After that, I could no longer trust life in the same innocent way, and it was not only death. Around me, everyone seemed to carry a hidden sadness. Yingchen was too gentle for this world. Even when people wronged her, she spoke softly and endured it. Her servant stole from her, her nurse gambled away her things, and still she only lowered her head and tried to keep peace. I used to think she was simply kind. Later, I understood that people who are too gentle are often pushed aside by the world before they even know they are being harmed. Tanchun was strong and clever. She tried to keep order in the family, to save what could still be saved, to cut waste and control disorder. But even while she acted firmly, she already saw what the rest of us tried not to see. Our family was spending more than it could bear. And the future was not secure. The more capable she seemed, the more sorrow I felt. If she had been born a man, she might have held a whole house together. But she was born a girl, and in the end she too would be carried away by family fate. And then there was Dayu. She had always been delicate, but now her sorrow seemed deeper than before. She could be hurt by a single careless word. She could smile in the morning and lie awake in pain by night. Other people said she was too sensitive. I knew that she simply felt life too sharply. Her heart was too true to protect itself. I still joked with her, still teased her, still tried to make her laugh, but beneath my laughter there was fear. I feared her illness. I feared her tears. I feared that the world around us, with all its rules and arrangements, would one day crush the fragile happiness we had built between us. And then there was Qingwen. Ah, Qingwen, she was beautiful like a flame, proud like a blade, quick-tempered, bold, and bright. She did not flatter, she did not lower herself. She argued, she scolded, she laughed, and she burned with life. But people like that do not fit safely into a world like ours. A servant girl may be pretty but not too pretty, clever but not too clever, spirited but never too spirited. Qingwen had too much life in her. At that time I still believed, foolishly, that as long as I cared for the people around me, as long as I cherished them, perhaps they would somehow remain safe. But the world does not change simply because one person loves deeply. That was the hardest lesson. In those days the flowers had not yet fallen, the garden was still beautiful. And yet, without fully understanding it, I had already begun to feel the truth. Before the flowers fall, people begin to scatter. That is how sorrow enters. Not all at once, but quietly, until the heart suddenly realizes it is already living in a different season. Chapter 8: The Search of the Grand View Garden. If the earlier changes were like a cold wind, then the search of the Grand View Garden was like a door being kicked open. To other people, the garden was only a beautiful place built for rank and display. To me, it was much more than that. It was the one small world where girls could still laugh, write poems, quarrel, dream, and suffer in their own way. It had its own spirit, not because it was free from jealousy or foolishness, but because it still held a kind of purity. That purity was fragile, and once suspicion enters a place, purity cannot survive. There had already been trouble in the household: gambling, stolen objects, hidden love tokens, loose talk, and fear of scandal. The family elders, especially those who thought most in terms of order and reputation, grew anxious. At last, the decision was made to search the garden. That night, rooms were opened, boxes were examined, and private things were handled by hands that had no right to touch them. The girls' apartments were no longer protected spaces. Every drawer, every letter, every piece of cloth, every little hidden memory, anything could become suspicious. I remember the feeling in my chest as if it were happening now. The rooms were still the same rooms. The furniture had not changed. The lamps still burned, but the air itself had changed. Everything that had once belonged to the private world of girls was suddenly treated as something dangerous. A poem hidden in a drawer was no longer only a poem. A fan, a perfume bag, a handkerchief, a ribbon, all could become evidence. How could beauty remain untouched after that? Tanchun saw the truth clearly that night. She was angry, proud, and bitter. She knew the search was not only about discipline. It was also a sign that the garden itself was no longer trusted. When a house begins to suspect the hearts of its own daughters and maids, then the soul of that house is already broken. Daeyu's rooms were not the center of scandal, but that did not matter. A soul like hers could not bear such humiliation lightly. She was too proud, too inward, too fine, even if no one openly accused her. The very fact that the garden had been turned into a place of inspection was enough to wound her deeply. But the sharpest wound of all fell upon Qingwen. She had never been liked by those who preferred obedience over spirit. She was too beautiful, too quick-tongued, too alive. People had long suspected her simply because she did not know how to lower her head and live half-dead like some servants do. After the search, all the old complaints against her rose again. They said she was too bold. They said she was improper. They said she was dangerous. They hinted at dirty things between her and me. Every word I heard filled me with helpless anger. Qingwen had many faults, but her heart was cleaner than that of many who judged her. She was not false, she was not sly. She was simply too bright to live safely under shadow, and brightness often suffers first. When she was driven out, I felt as if someone had torn a living part from my world. I wanted to keep her. I wanted to defend her. But I was watched, confined, sick with grief and helplessness. In the end, my love for her could not save her. That was when I first understood with full force that I was not the master of anything. I could not even protect those closest to me. From that night on, the Grand View Garden was no longer the same. The buildings remained, the flowers still bloomed. The girls still met and spoke, but a crack had opened, and once a dream cracks, no one inside it can truly sleep peacefully again. Chapter 9: Qingwen's Death and the Loss of My Jade. When Qingwen died, something inside me became empty. Before that, I still believed that people would leave in ordinary ways. A servant could be sent away and perhaps one day return. A quarrel could be repaired, a sickness could pass, a flower could bloom again next spring, but Qingwen did not return. She had already been ill when she was cast out. She was proud, quick to anger, and too fierce to bend herself into the shape the household wanted. Once she had been humiliated and sent away, her body and spirit both began to fail. I kept thinking I would find a way to see her, to send something, to do something. But that is one of the cruelest lies in life, the thought that there will still be time tomorrow. When I finally reached her, she was already at the edge of death. How could someone who had once blazed with such life now lie so still? I remembered her fingers sewing under lamplight, her fierce eyes, the way she scolded the younger girls. The way she turned away when angry, the way even her anger shone with life. To see such a person reduced to a dying body felt unbearable. After she died, I wrote the elegy for a hibiscus maid. People may have thought I was mourning only a servant. They did not understand. Through Qingwen, I was mourning all the bright, doomed girls in our world. She seemed to me like a flower too vivid for this earth, not killed by autumn wind, but by the cruelty of human hearts. After Qingwen's death, I saw flowers differently. Before, when petals fell, I only thought them beautiful and sad. Afterward, it seemed to me that every falling petal was weeping for someone. Then something strange happened. The crabapple trees in my courtyard, which had once seemed withered, suddenly bloomed out of season. The whole family came to look. Some called it a sign of joy, some called it a wonder, but I felt cold inside. I remembered Qingwen. I remembered how quiet my rooms had become after she left. Flowers do not bloom strangely for no reason. If plants have spirits, then perhaps they too sense the turning of human fate, and not long after that I lost my jade. That day grandmother came to admire the flowers. In the hurry of changing clothes, I failed to put the jade back on. Later, when the family gathering ended and I reached for it, it was gone. At first I tried to act calm. I said it must still be somewhere in the room. But when Xian Shayu and the others searched everywhere and still could not find it, fear spread like ice. For years I had worn that jade as naturally as breathing. I had not always thought deeply about it. Only when it disappeared did I realize that it was not merely an ornament. It was like a thread binding me to this world. Once it was gone, I too began to drift. People searched quietly at first, trying not to alarm the household. They questioned servants, searched rooms, consulted fortune tellers, and even turned to strange spiritual methods. Yet the jade was nowhere to be found. Sitting in the middle of that confusion, I felt a dark certainty grow inside me. A great disaster was coming. I could not have explained why. It was simply a feeling that the air itself had changed, that all the bright things around us were already dimming. Then more grief followed. The imperial consort, my elder sister Yuan-chun, died in the palace. Mourning spread through the family. At the same time, I myself, shaken by the loss of the jade, sank deeper and deeper into confusion. People said I had gone mad. Perhaps I had. But it was not only I who had gone mad. It was the dream itself that had begun to break apart. Qingwen's death had filled me with pain. The loss of the jade filled me with something even worse, a sense that the old world was collapsing and I could no longer hold it together, even inside my own mind. And still, even then, the sharpest pain had not yet arrived. Chapter 10. While Dayu burned her poems, I was carried to marriage. If anyone asks what wound in my life never stopped hurting, I would answer this: when Lin Dayu died, I was not beside her. That alone is enough to break a heart forever. People speak of the bond of stone and flower, of debts, of tears, of destiny. In youth, I only half understood such things. Later, I came to understand them with my whole being, but too late. After I lost the jade, my mind had already become weak and clouded. The family used that weakness against me. They were afraid of my closeness to Dayu. They wanted another future. Quietly, secretly, they made a cruel plan. They told me I was to marry Dayu, but in truth, they arranged for Baochai to take her place. This was the famous deception of the wedding. It is one of the cruelest things imaginable, not simply to separate two hearts, but to use trust itself as the instrument of betrayal. Had I been fully clear-minded, perhaps I might have sensed more. But I was already broken by grief, by the lost jade, by family disaster, by the strange emptiness that had settled inside me. So I let myself be carried forward into that ceremony, half aware, half lost. The wedding hall was bright with red candles. Music sounded, people smiled and spoke of joy, yet inside me something felt terribly wrong. At the very same time, Dayu lay dying. Already weakened by years of illness and sorrow, she now heard that I was to marry and not her. Not knowing the truth of the deception, believing herself abandoned, she reached the end of hope. Before dying, she burned her old poems. Those poems had held her most private thoughts, her beauty, her pain, her love. To burn them was not merely to destroy paper, it was to burn her own heart. People say she burned her poems and ended her foolish love, but I do not think her love ended. I think it was so deep that it could no longer remain inside a living body. If I had known then what was happening, if I had been by her side, if I had seen her one last time, if I had taken even one burned page from her hands, then perhaps the pain would be different now, but I was not there. That is the grief I can never forgive in myself. When I later learned the truth, my mind shattered. As for Baochai, I could not hate her. She too was trapped in the design of the family. She was not the one who wounded me. She was not the one who killed Dayu. She was only another person being pushed by a world stronger than individual feeling. Yet how could I look at her without thinking of Dayu? From that night onward, everything inside me became torn. My body still lived. My breath still moved, but the deepest part of me had already died once. That is why when people later called me mad, I did not argue. Madness may be the only honest answer when a man's truest love is burned, buried, and replaced under a bridal veil. Chapter 11. The great Jia house burns out like a lamp after Dayu's death. I was still alive, but I walked as if through ruins. In earlier years, the Jia family had seemed unshakable. Our halls were full, our rank was high, our relatives powerful, our gardens beautiful. Even those of us who sensed sadness still lived inside that brightness. Only later did I truly see how fragile it all had been. First, my elder sister Yuan-chun died in the palace. To outsiders, she was an imperial consort. To the family, she was not only a daughter but a pillar of prestige and protection. When she died, the family lost one of the great invisible supports holding it upright. Then grandmother died. That was a deeper loss than any public honor. As long as grandmother lived, the house still had a heart. Under her protection, tempers softened, old dignity remained, and some warmth survived. I myself had been loved and sheltered by her since childhood. When she was gone, the household lost not only authority but spirit. The family did not simply become sad, it became colder. Then Wang Zifeng died too. In her youth, she had been dazzling, clever, bold, hard, capable, and full of force. She managed people and crises better than many men. Yet all her sharpness, all her skill, could not finally save either the family or herself. She fell sick, weakened, and died worn out by calculation, struggle, and the heavy burden of trying to control too much. Watching her decline taught me another lesson: intelligence and force cannot defeat fate forever. After that, everything fell faster. Money ran short, power weakened, old protections failed. The family's former glory became like the shell of a grand lamp after its oil has nearly run out. It may still shine for a while, but the flame is already dying. Around me the girls scattered. Tanchun was married far away. Yingchun had already suffered bitterly. Zichun moved toward religion. Xiangyun carried her own share of sorrow. One by one, the world of the garden disappeared. Looking back, I realized that what I mourned was not only Dayu, not only Qingwen, not only grandmother. I mourned the entire vanished world of girls, poems, laughter, tears, flowers, and youth. They had seemed like immortal spirits, dropped for a few short years into one earthly garden. And I, the stone, had been left to watch them all depart. That is what the fall of the Jia family truly meant to me, not simply loss of wealth. Not simply decline of rank, but the extinguishing of the great lamp under which all our fragile beauty had once been seen. Chapter 12. When the dream ended, I was still the stone in time. I passed the examinations. If judged by the world, this should have been a happy ending. At last I had done what my father wished. At last I seemed to be walking the proper road. After all my strange behavior, all my grief, all my wandering of heart and mind, people could have said that I had finally returned to sense. But by then my heart was no longer in this world. How could it be? Dayu was gone, grandmother was gone, Qingwen was gone. Fengji was gone, the garden was gone, the family was broken. The jade that had once been lost was eventually returned. And that, more than anything, completed the circle. When the monk reappeared and spoke to me, it was as if the beginning of my life suddenly rose before me again. The jade was not simply returned to my hand, my entire fate was returned to my understanding. I was reminded of who I had once been. Not truly a son of worldly success, not truly a man made for ambition, not even fully a creature of ordinary human life. I was the stone that had entered the red dust to experience love, beauty, sorrow, and illusion. And now the experience was complete. People sometimes ask, why did I leave? Why did I not simply remain in the world, live quietly, and carry my memories in silence? The answer is not that I hated the world. How could I hate it? This world had given me Dayu, grandmother, Qingwen, Xian, Beichai, poetry, flowers, music, tears. And all the sweetest and bitterest feelings I had ever known. No, I did not leave because I hated the world. I left because everything had been exhausted. The love had reached its end, the dream had reached its end, the tears had reached their end. When a play is finished and the lamps are already darkening, what meaning is there in remaining on the stage, still dressed for a role no longer being performed? So I followed the monk in the Taoist away. The road was cold, the morning was pale. Of course I looked back, how could I not? Behind me were all the names, faces, and rooms that had shaped my life. But I also knew that none of them remained as they once had been. If I stayed, I would only stand among broken things, turning old pain over and over in my hands, so I went. And if you ask me what wisdom I gained from life, I will not answer with some grand religious truth. I learned only this: do not believe that beauty will last because it is beautiful. Do not believe that love will remain because it is true. Do not believe that wealth is a foundation. Do not believe that youth is a season that can be kept. Everything passes. Even so, I do not regret entering the human world. For if I had never come, how would I have known how tender girls can be, how cruel parting can be? How brightly flowers bloom before they fall, and how empty the heart feels when the dream is over. I came as a stone. I leave still as a stone, but between those two moments I saw a whole world, and for all its sorrow I cannot say that it was wasted. If there is another dream of the Red Chamber character you would like to hear next, please leave a comment below.